the objectives are the same, but the way in which you achieve them changes all the time.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Creative Haven. I am here with my friend Allie Yaldezian. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Hello.
awesome. So Allie and I have known each other for a few years now, and it started with a friend of mine who worked at an agency, Elevate Your Brand,
Yeah,
and
elevate my brand. Yeah.
Elevate My Brand. That's right. And that was a few years ago, and we've just kept in touch. And I've seen you move on to other agencies, and we actually connected on nature and hiking, and you gave me some great tips on Yosemite. Before we get into it, I'd love for you to tell the audience more about your story and how you got to where you are today.
So in terms of getting into marketing and advertising, I didn't, just like any typical college student, I didn't have a major that I was going in for. And it was something that my mom had said to me before I even went away to school. I think you'd be really good at marketing and advertising, right? As moms know, they've got their premonitions on their kids and what they're going to excel at. And I just chalked it up as, yeah, okay. And went to college, took a variety of classes to kind of get a sense of what I liked. I took an advertising course and everything made sense. And it was what kind of drove me to like, okay, she was right. All right,
Mom knows.
I gotta look into this a little bit more. Started doing internships, really loved it. And that led me to a career in marketing and advertising that's really taken off. Now I do PR as well. So really well-rounded in that element.
Yeah, I think these days you have to be well-rounded in just PR and marketing and advertising and social media and content creation, content marketing. It's all been something that people have had to learn as a great way that can make yourself more valuable, and also to know the terminology when you're working with those departments and other people from other
Totally.
companies. And so when you were learning more about advertising and marketing, what was it that really gravitated you towards that profession? Or what was it about that you were learning that was interesting, that really helped you see your future in marketing and advertising?
I think for me the first moment where it clicked was in this course that I took, and it was part of the communication major. I had already signed up and was in the process of obtaining that degree. And it was one of the courses offered, and it was just so unlike anything else. Everything else in that major was theory based.
Mhm.
It was very, very, very research heavy and lots of PowerPoints, big, thick textbooks. And sure enough, and every no discredit to all of those professors, they're all amazing researchers. They've been published many, many times in all kinds of um, academic papers and books and things like that. But the advertising course was taught by somebody that used to run an advertising agency. He had no book, he had no PowerPoints. It was just you come in, you listen, and everything made sense. It was just very straightforward. It's
Yeah.
a mix of strategy and creative, which I feel
Hmm.
like is more of where I excel, is kind of in the middle. I'm not totally left brain, but I'm not totally right brain either. So to me, it's that marrying of the two, um, and being able to speak to both sides of that. So
Yeah.
having a solid founding and approach and research and knowledge about who you're targeting and what the brand is and what the brand voice is, but then using that as a foundation to say, okay, now I know X, Y, and Z. How can I present that in a creative way? And that
Yeah.
is what I think I love about it, is it's a little bit of everything.
So what would you say are the elements that you would need to create a solid advertising or marketing plan?
So the research first, I
Hmm.
ask my clients will tell you this. I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, of course you have to.
um, I ask a lot of questions, and some of them I'm sure to some other people who are just getting to know me are I'm sure very off topic to them. But I kind of use that as a way to learn and get a sense of what the brand is doing all the
Hmm.
way around, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're only focused on one part of it, you're going to miss out on other things. And so that's why I like to ask, what are you doing next? And, what has worked well for you? And why are you so engaged on social? And, what are the top comments that people make about your products? It
Mm-hmm.
helps me because then I can say like, okay, there might be one word that they say, and
Mm-hmm.
that word could be the whole foundation for an entirely creative campaign.
Love
And
that.
so if you don't get that word, you lost out on an opportunity to do something with it. And that's so to me, having the research and the backing and all of the analytics and the data helps me, and this is just me personally, be
Mm-hmm.
creative
Mm-hmm.
because that gives me a founding to work with them.
Yeah. And this is it's interesting you bring up data because I remember the days of when I was a YouTube creator and working with brands on YouTube and social media, looking into insights and data and figuring out what posted well and better than others and what had the most engagement. And there's a point actually where you ask yourself if you want to follow the data towards what's popular and working, yet it's skewing away from your original voice or going towards what your mission and purpose is, but no one is watching at this moment. So, how do you actually steer a brand or a company into the right direction so they're not just chasing the numbers, but they're actually staying true to their mission and their purpose?
Good question. And we actually have a number of clients like that, right? That
Hmm.
have, and you see that a lot in the influencer space too, right? Where
Yeah.
some influencers, well, or YouTubers or content creators, whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
because everybody
TikTokers,
has their term,
of
right?
course.
Um, a lot of them who do well in the long term are the ones that stay true to who they are. They
Hmm.
don't just take any random brand sponsorship or affiliate link or what have you because they'll make a quick dollar. Their fans know, and consumers, fans, anybody who's buying anything these days is really, really wise to that. We
Yeah.
know as consumers, like this doesn't seem real, or, this doesn't seem on brand. So, in terms of going back to your question, we always encourage our clients to stay true to them. And, you know, maybe there is, and that's the thing too, brands want to be doing what's new, right? That's
Hmm.
the fun thing about marketing is there are the core staples and principles, and the objectives are the same, but the way in which you achieve them changes all the time. So,
Hmm.
social has been a big conversation for years, but Facebook, you know 10, 15 years ago, every brand needed a Facebook, right? Like that was just part of signing up for social media as a brand, was you needed to have an active Facebook presence.
Yeah.
If I had a brand that's completely new now say we want a Facebook, I'd be like, why though? Like, why do you want a Facebook? Are you trying to target people that use Facebook, or is it just because you know that it's there and it's a giant? Because it might not work for you. So
Hmm.
I think there are always ways to attract the audience that is true to your brand. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of looking deeper and seeing what works.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have a brand go too far away from what they're doing. They want to stay on track for, who they are, what their mission is, who their clientele is. And the fun thing about marketing is it's my job to find the ways for them to do that.
Hmm. And for when you ever have to come up with, of course, a proposal or a campaign, and you're looking at these different social media platforms and trends, what have you found is the best way to keep up to trends for you? Do you follow certain people on each platform? Are you on certain blogs? Do you have a newsletter? Because for me, it's become this ever-ending stream of text messages or messages about the new clubhouse room that's hot, or a cool TikTok video you got to watch, and then this new carousel marketing method everyone's using. It's a lot. And so what do you
It's a
find,
lot.
where do you find all these trends for yourself, And then how do you shift through it so you know not to just chase the shiny object?
I would say the majority of our clients aren't ones that go after that. They're not going to just go, oh, this is cool, so we got to be on it, right? It's not, those aren't really the kinds of brands that we attract at our agency. So I've never been one that's super concerned about reading every blog and
Mm-hmm.
following all the other marketing content creators or signing up for newsletters. It's one of those things that if you're immersed just in culture in general,
Mm.
you're going to learn about stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, you're going to hear about what went viral. You're going to hear and see different advertising campaigns just from what you're watching in general. You're going to hear about major products in the news.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, I feel like I don't need to do that. And I'm not saying like to anybody that does, like that's great. I'm immersed in it all day. So at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day,
We get away
I
from
don't
it.
want to sit and read, a newsletter. It's one of those things that if it's big enough to make a splash, you're gonna hear about it regardless. So
Yeah.
that's kind
Is
of my philosophy on
Isn't
it.
it funny as a marketer and advertiser that when you are creating campaigns for your clients, when you're hit with the same campaign, how much it annoys you, or the same lead generation, VA outreach or whatnot on LinkedIn? It's something that I've always wondered about. How do I look, or how does, how do I make my clients look to other people? And
Hmm.
would I actually accept that myself as a consumer?
Exactly.
And so for you, when you are putting yourself, in those shoes of the consumer as your target audience of your clients, product or services, what do you say? What do you think to yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
My light went out.
The real line went
There
out,
we
ladies and
go.
gentlemen. It's okay. So when you are trying to put yourself in the shoes of the target audience and really think about, okay, what's going to really attract myself? How do you erase whatever's been in your mind as Allie and become the target audience?
It can be challenging. I will say that. It's,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the reasons that I like data. When it
Yeah.
when it comes to that is getting us, because sometimes brands will say like, oh, we think this is our target.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all well and good. And that might be the way that you designed that product, or that might be who you've historically gone after. But I like to always double check for myself to see, is that actually who is buying this?
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, then we need to shift things. And that's also why I love A/B testing when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to advertising, is you can see, what group responds to what message, responds to what imagery, responds to what frequency. I mean, there's so many different campaign variables. So when it comes to that, I also just like to be, I like to ask people in my, network and everyday life. If I have a
Mm-hmm.
product that is catered towards, somebody that's my parents' age, I'm going to ask them, what do
Mm-hmm.
you think of
Mm-hmm.
this? Would you use this? If you wouldn't, would your friends use it?
Yeah.
What would be exciting to you about this? Like, I just like to use resources that are there and everyday people. I mean, you can look to a journal for that stuff. You can look to research it. And I like to do a little bit of that too. But to me, if it's not something that I would enjoy and I can put myself directly into that consumer's frame of reference, I'll think of somebody I know, because I just over the years have met so many people and could
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, I think that person would really like it. So let me ask them.
Nice. So you probably have their contact in your phone as 30-year-old male who likes food. Okay.
No.
Johnny, I have this product. I would actually want to go back to your point of being outside of your industry, or being in trying to be involved with things and cultures and communities outside of what your job and career is, in order for you to actually perform better, to be inspired by different types of genres and communities and interests, so that you're not stuck in marketing mode. Because when you're stuck in
Yeah.
marketing mode, all you see is this tunnel vision of what is in the marketing industry. You're just like KPIs and sales funnels and copyright.
Yeah.
And so I know that we talked about this before. You love nature. And so we
Yeah.
actually discussed that a lot and bonded over that. And so for you, what has it been? How has it been for you as you're working and you have those moments where you get stressed and you go out and hike? What
Hmm.
is that experience like for you? And how did you get into, hiking and exploring the national parks of America?
I would say, I mean, to me, it's a peace of mind thing, right? When you're in front of your computer all day, there's only, so much creativity that's going to come out of that. And to me, it's a reset button. It's
Hmm.
going outside, breathing in hopefully clean air. We're in Los Angeles here, so you can't always get 100% pure, oxygen. But um, it's looking around. It's taking the time for yourself. And even if I can't hike or go outside or go on a road trip or something like that, even just going for a walk around the
Hmm.
neighborhood and getting out of the zone, because that when you're working on something for a long time, you get total tunnel vision, like you said,
Hmm.
right? You get immersed into it. All of a sudden, these taglines, for instance, that you drafted up sound amazing because you've been focusing on them for so long. And then, you're like, oh, you could walk away and be like, this is great. I don't need anybody else's opinion. It's always helpful to step away,
Yeah.
um, in general. And to me, nature is the best tool for that. Just because it changes your perspective, right? When you're amongst trees, there's no screens in front of you.
Hmm.
There's no one. What I love about hiking too, and going into camping in national parks is you lose service. And I know people like generally freak out about not having service. To me, it's my favorite thing because
Yeah.
it forces you to be in the moment and present and focused on what you're doing, who you're with, what you're seeing, how your body is feeling. It's just a much more grounding experience than if you're constantly plugged into your phone and answering emails and thinking about work. So to me, it's just one of those things that the more I get away, the more energized and creative I can be. And also, too, when you're in places like that, I mean, obviously it's a little different right now with COVID, but when
Hmm.
you're exploring different national parks or going to new areas, you meet different people from different walks of life. And that in and of itself is a super creative thing for somebody like me, right? We're talking about getting into the perspective of somebody else.
Hmm.
I meet all kinds of people when I'm out in different national parks from all different parts of the world. And that in and of itself is super helpful when you're going to create a campaign. You're like, I'm not this, but I met that guy and he was talking about this, and I never would have known that if he hadn't told me. So I never knew there was that subculture, but now I know. So,
That's right. You'll find a mountaineer who is also a knitter that you
yep,
can use for a focus group.
exactly.
You actually brought up such a good point of when you're hiking and you lose service, and when you have all trails on and you get lost a little bit and you're in the flow and you're like, I need to check my all trails to make sure that I'm not dead. Oh wait, hold on. Oh, can you see me? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
And it's just you pick out your phone and all of a sudden you see that notification and you realize you turn the service came back on, and it's that dread of like, oh my God, the real world just hit me again. And
Yep.
so I'm totally with you about just shutting off and just making sure that we spend time in nature and spend time away from technology, because sometimes technology, it really separates us from being human in ways. I know this is like
Yeah.
a very existential and very like deep
But that's
conversation.
that's why I like it. I mean, I don't think we're meant to be online all the time, 100%
Hmm.
ready for any conversation. And I mean, I'm very thankful that the position I'm in, I'm not working, crazy hours every day. It's get in, do the work, do a good job, be done. But, right now with COVID, I definitely am watching way more content than I normally ever would have, when there's
Yeah.
really nothing to do at night aside from be home. So I'm missing that sense of what I used to get from all these different trips and, going out and exploring different areas that are not within driving distance.
Yeah.
Um, and
Did you
it's one of those things.
when you were let me ask you top 3 national parks. I want people on this podcast to know the best national parks. Allie has been around the country. Remember you told me this. And you actually went to the Appalachian Trail. Is that right?
Yeah, I did a
Yeah.
small portion
Small
in
portion.
the Smoky Mountain National Park, or
Yeah.
Great Smoky.
So tell us what are your top 3, your favorites?
I would say my favorite is Glacier National Park in Montana.
Okay, nice.
Just jaw-droppingly stunning. And that isn't to say that all the other national parks aren't, but there was just something about it that was just like every corner is a new viewpoint. It's just amazing. And just the experience of being in Montana. I started going on these trips with cousins, and this was the first one that we did. Um, being in a small town and staying there and meeting all the local people at the local bar, and you meet all kinds of characters who have all kinds of crazy adventure stories. And driving into the park, there was a little distillery on the side of the road that we stopped at, just has this amazing whiskey that they were brewing, and you never would have stumbled upon that if you didn't go that way.
Hmm.
So I think all of those things combined um, just made for a great experience. That would be my first one. Yosemite is
Glacier.
definitely number 2.
Yes.
We're just lucky here in California that that's here, and that's our,
Hmm.
in our backyard, if you will. And I would recommend to anybody that goes, yes, definitely go see the valley, go see El Cap. You'll
Hmm.
see it all when you come out of tunnel view if you go in from that
Yes.
direction of the park.
It's hard to
And that is
miss.
all beautiful. Go spend some time in the Awani if you can, even if you just go in for coffee or something. But my favorite part of the park is actually much further north, um,
The Meadows.
in the meadows, in Tuolumne Meadows. That's where my family and I usually camp when we go.
Mm.
um, just it's great because that campground has like 15 to 20 different trails right off of it,
Hmm.
and there's something for everybody. So you could go on a quick, like flat walking trail if that's your thing. You could go on a 15-mile hike if that's your thing. They've got rocky terrain, they've got meadows, they've got rivers, they've got mountain, like it's all right there. And that's what's so cool to me.
Hmm.
is you could on one hike all of a sudden be in a flat meadow, to a rocky stream, to a forest, to chaparral desert, and it's all in one hike, and it's 4 different biomes, which is just so cool. So that one I would say is number 2, and then Sequoia is my third, just because it holds a special
Nice.
place in my heart. My the camp that I grew up going to and volunteered at throughout adulthood is right outside of the Sequoias.
Hmm.
So it's just would go there every year for that, and then outside of that, I've explored it a lot. Very cool caves there as well, which is unique to
Yeah. I mean, great
visit.
choices, and I'm just happy that 2 of them are in California. I mean, we're
Yep.
just it's very it's a beautiful, I think, just addition to the state itself, because it's just everything you need is in California. I love
Hmm.
California. I'm in Texas now. I'll always be a Californian. For me, I love how you said, when you're in Yosemite, you're surrounded by different biomes. That honestly was the reason why I felt a connection there. And I think that's just the idea of being with nature and being without any traffic sounds, without any helicopters
Hmm.
or sirens, and just hearing the wind and
Yep.
insects and animals. When you just hear
Yep.
the wind and you can actually see stars, that's when I feel so connected. And so when you are out there and, like you said, you feel more creative, do you ever Do you journal? Do you I don't know if you listen to music. Do you just think? What is your usual, I guess, just routine when you're out in nature? Or is it just really just sitting there and meditating?
It's to me, it's more immersive. Like
Mhm.
I definitely, I will throw a little, judgment. I don't like when people are hiking and they've got their like speaker system on them.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, you can listen on your own with your own headphones. Like that's, I don't want to hear that. That's why I'm here. I don't want to hear what you're listening to. Like I want to just hear what's going on. I want to hear the stream. I want to hear the birds. I want to hear. So I don't usually listen to music when I'm in nature. I just like hearing what naturally is there.
Mhm.
And usually for me too, I don't go solo camping. I'm not at that level, nor do I really want to be. Um, it's one of those things that I just enjoy who I'm there with, whether that's my family or friends or boyfriend. It's one of those things that's just like we're here and we're here
Mhm.
together now. And I've found that being out in those kinds of environments where there's no distractions, right? So
Mhm.
getting constantly, you're not texting somebody else that's not there. You're not on a call. You're not in front of your computer. You have a lot more authentic conversations that are more, real conversations that you not
Mhm.
necessarily would have at home, um, just because there's nothing else going on. So
Mhm.
it's kind of one of those things that you become a little closer with each trip, depending on who you're going with. But
It's true. I went there. I went to Yosemite last summer with my family, and we got a cabin inside the park. And
mhm.
we had a night, no phones. It was just we made dinner with whatever we had. We found at the grocery store. That was just, it wasn't even a huge grocery store. It was like
Yeah,
a store, like just a regular like
it's a
convenience
general
store,
store.
a general store. I was gonna say, I don't even know what to
Yeah.
call it. So we're at a general store, and then we all got together and just started cooking, and we had wine, we had chocolates, we played board games, we talked. We actually talked and stay engaged with each other, and it's that feeling of community and being with your tribe, being with your family, and that connection that really helps you break out of the routine of the mundane routine of work
Yeah.
and having to chase certain KPIs or your own idea of success, and having to impress this client or your boss, whatever it is. It just gives you the
Or even
sense
just
that,
like the sense of like, oh, we're not sitting here watching our favorite sitcom,
hmm
that we always watch after, a full day of work. It's just one of those things that shifts up what's going on. And
yeah, have you?
you could just sit there. I mean, I would get as much enjoyment of just sitting there in a hammock and reading, um,
hmm
without that sense of like, oh, at this time I have to do this, and then oh, there's dishes in the sink. Like, no, I'm here right now. This is all that's going on. That's
That's
it.
right. That's right. I love that. And have you ever felt that because of your experience with nature, that if you ever dealt with a brand that has nature in the outdoors and within their
Hmm.
branding, that you can really speak to them? Because I know that we spoke a few years ago about how you was working with a brand like that. So how is,
Yeah.
working with being in nature, being that outdoorsy person helped you work with brands who have that type of branding in their company, in their business?
It's awesome. I mean, those brands are my favorite just because it's like, oh, your target audience is me. This is
Hmm
great. This is going to be so much fun for me because it's basically me talking to myself in a roundabout way. Um, and it's just fun because sometimes you get to go out and it depends on what you're doing for the brand, of course.
hmm
But, a couple years ago, we had a couple different brands that were outdoorsy brands, and we wanted to do a video shoot. And so for work, got to put on my hiking boots and my camping gear and go out for a day. It was a very low budget production. So we had friends as the, talent in the
hmm
video.
hmm
So I got to spend a day in one of my favorite areas in nature with my friends, and that was my work for the day. So
hmm
it's it's crazy. it's just one of those things that like I feel very lucky to
Yeah.
have gotten to work with some really, really cool brands, um, and kind of guide them in that way too. So we have another client, who's a bigger name client, and they're trying to tap into some newer markets that they're not really in or known for, right? And that's,
Hmm.
it might not be the exact same kind of outdoorsy activities that I'm into per se, but it's still helpful for me to say like, okay, well, if we're going to film a video for this, I've been here, here, and here. I think those
Hmm.
would all be amazing backdrops.
Hmm.
And even just having that level of connection with the client, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. It's one of those things that if you can connect to them on a personal level, at the end of the day, we're
Hmm.
not all professionals here sitting behind our emails going, you know, to whom it may concern and per my last email. Like it's, and especially I think with
Love
COVID
that.
too, people are becoming more familiar with other, you know, who they're working with and what their lives are like. So it's always really cool when you have a client that is something that you would actually want or use or
Hmm.
already like, because then you can really immerse yourself into it and do a really killer job for them.
No, it's so true. I think that's hilarious what you're talking about, how people, when you're cold outreaching and you're trying to talk to someone that you haven't heard, you don't know, and you're saying to whom it may concern, or whatnot. And it's so true nowadays. Everyone's been so digital that it's almost like, hey, I just wanted you to know this is what I do and this is how I can
Yep.
help you. I noticed that you're a really cool brand. I like the same things that you do. Would you like to connect? What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a very interesting year. And what have you found as kind of like the new attitude when it comes to post, I mean, it's not even post COVID. What am I talking about? 2021 COVID. Okay. Now we're out over the first year. You know, what have you found is kind of this new attitude towards marketing and advertising and just like being virtual in general?
I would say that it's interesting, right? Because a lot in the general marketing world has completely had, some of it has stayed the exact same
Mm-hmm.
in that you can still put out ads on, you know, Google or Facebook or what have you. You can still you know, put out a press release. That hasn't changed. But I would say a huge thing that I've noticed, and there's always brands, right, that are um, more in the know or adopt a
Yeah.
new trend or something first. I've seen a huge, huge, huge shift from brands that created their own content originally, right? So if they're creating, you know, their own videos, whether they're just, you know, like YouTube content or social content or advertising content, I've seen way more user generated content being
Mm.
immersed into branded content. I've seen a lot more brands shifting to work with influencers if they hadn't historically, just because one, that person is already creating content. That person sets up their own restrictions on what they want to do. You're not
Mm-hmm.
flying out to them. You're not, you know, there's no COVID regulations for you to work with that person because they can film what they want to film.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, what state says about this or what that. So I, and two, people are home and they're watching other people.
Yeah.
So all of these, it's so crazy to me because there's this group of YouTube content creators that I've been following for one of our clients. Um, and I had started looking at a lot of them, I would say September-ish of 2019, and you know, watching what they were doing, looking at them to see if they were a good fit for this client. And I have the numbers that I reported to the client when it was, you know, like we're considering them, this is their follower base, this is their
Mm-hmm.
engagement rating, and going back to that and seeing where they're at now, it's crazy. Like their
Yeah.
subscriber bases are just taking off because people are home and
Yeah.
they don't have anything else to do. So, and in
So
this case, it's
true.
automotive. So there, a lot of more people are tinkering with their cars. They're taking care of their cars.
Wow,
Their
that's
car
right.
now their vessel, right, to get anywhere fun.
Mm-hmm,
You're not
mm-hmm.
taking a plane necessarily. You're not taking a train. You're not taking public transit. More people are invested in this. So it's crazy to me to watch somebody that had maybe 50,000 followers all of a sudden now have 500,000 in the span
Wow.
of a year.
Yeah. And you know what I also attribute it to is smart TVs. I think it also how
Yep.
people are just able to watch YouTube on their TV, and it's not just
Mhm.
a computer or a mobile viewing experience. I remember going to my uncle's house. This is like a family dinner. I think it was actually, sorry, it was like Thanksgiving. You know, we just had like a small family Thanksgiving, a COVID giving. And so we were just sitting there and we were talking about HBO. We're talking about what was it? We always talk about what's the HBO series you've watched? Oh, what's the new movie you watched? And I asked him,
Mhm.
so what have you been watching lately? And he's like, oh yeah, there's this YouTube channel that I've been watching, and this guy, you know, he's just cooking in the Philippines, and he's in the jungle, and he's cooking, and I heard he makes money, and now
I
people
heard he
are,
makes money.
yeah, it's weird. Now people like the older generation or people who just never got hip to YouTube are learning
Right.
how people are making money from YouTube, and because they're watching them on their TVs. It's
Mhm.
such a great transition now because a lot of creators, like you said, UGC, user generated content, and a lot of the influencers now are becoming stars. And also people are
Yeah.
forgiving webcam and cell phone footage. And it's
Yeah, it's
really just
not
about,
like you
yeah,
need a high quality production, right? And that's the thing too. I think that's so interesting is you see all the major content creators, right? Netflix is putting out something new every week.
yeah.
Hulu's putting out like all of this stuff is getting put out on a frequent basis because they're trying to catch up. I mean, they're trying
Hmm.
to keep people on the platform, whereas content creators, there's something for everyone. I have
Yeah.
found all different kinds of just for doing for work categories that I never even would have imagined finding on
Yeah.
YouTube. For one client, they just created a new home cleaning product, and so I'm
Hmm.
looking at people who are cleaning on YouTube, and they've got
They're crushing
300,
it.
400,000
Yeah.
followers, and their videos are 2 hours long. And I'm like, hey, good for you. This isn't for me, but if you can keep people engaged and you've got, 1,000 comments on a video of you cleaning your kitchen, there's something for everybody.
Hmm. It's also when you think about it, when you are a marketer and advertiser and you're helping other people and you're helping other brands, you look at yourself sometimes and you ask, how can I market and advertise myself? Because we're
It's the
slowly,
hardest thing.
it is in this world where our LinkedIn profiles is basically what our career is based off of when in first impressions. And how are we
Hmm.
branding ourselves? How are we marketing ourselves? And it's that tough question of like, am I taking my own advice? And so
Oh yeah.
whatever you see that either for yourself or the company that you work with, I always ask this question for people who have the agencies. How do you apply what you tell your clients to yourself?
I honestly am probably not very good at that.
Yeah.
It's
It's hard.
it's
I'm being there.
definitely hard. I think, and the thing is for me, like I have I've only actually worked at two agencies. I've
Hmm.
only ever shifted, jobs once.
Hmm.
So thankfully, my LinkedIn, if you went and looked at it, it's probably not very active because I haven't updated it in some time. So,
Hmm.
um, but it's hard. I mean, especially marketing a person. And that's
Yeah.
something too. Like I've worked with individuals in the past who, come to you and they want help marketing themselves. And it's just not the right fit for me because it's
Hmm.
really hard to sell a person. It's so much easier to sell
A
a
product.
brand, or even if you
Yeah.
have a product spokesperson behind a brand, that's easier because there's
Hmm.
something that you can go back to say, this is what makes this product unique. This is what people like about this product. It's so weird to see a person because what are you going to say? Their friend thinks they're fantastic. It's just,
Case studies for a person.
it's hard. I mean, I know we have that in the form of LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah.
endorsements and, people writing in, reviews, but
Reviews.
it's
Yeah. Person
even
review.
that is
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to go to somebody, even if you've worked with them for years and say, hey, would you mind writing a review about me? It's just, it's super awkward.
It is. I actually, I get it because I'm asking people to do testimonials, but it's not on me. It's testimonials on my company,
Hmm.
and it's also like I think about it too when people are giving testimonials on just people, and it's you don't want to offend people because it's like it's this tribe
Right.
mentality, right? The whole idea of like we grew up when we started as humans who needed to survive in tribes, so we have this hormone in our bodies that really respond to connection with other humans. So doing a bad review on someone personally, like it almost hurts to do that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you see that bad review on Yelp or on Amazon, and you're just saying, "You jerk!" Like all happened. You were just the one out of 1,000 that got a bad shipping. You don't give this people one
Yeah.
star. I love that back scratcher. But Allie, I'm really glad that we like hopped on. I actually know that you are a busy person and probably have to go, and this is really awesome. And before we go, I mean, I just want you to tell everyone kind of like advice of like how people should approach um, creativity and how to begin in your creative mindset by using nature to kind of just jumpstart a creative idea or to get out of a creative rut. Like what do you suggest to people like in the advertising and marketing world who are stuck in their computers and you're just like trying to make this campaign work? Like what would you say to them is kind of like a best way to go out in nature, either it's a walk or a hike or whatnot?
I would say, I mean, obviously that's a given. If you have that available to you and you can go do that, changing your scenery is always a
Mhm.
good thing. It puts you into a different mindset. If you're not in a place where you're familiar, all of a sudden you're looking at everything, right? So you're looking at like, well, what's over here? What's over here? Why is that there? Versus if you're on the same walk every day, you're like, yep, that house yesterday had, this work done and now today they've made progress here and that dog lives over there. And it's not as I'm seeing it's not as creative versus if you go, even if you just drive to a different neighborhood to go on your daily walk, it changes your perspective.
Mhm.
And that's really what I find is something helpful when you're doing any kind of creative activity is having a different perspective. And even if you can't go on a walk or, go out or go on a hike or what have you, talk to somebody different. Talk to somebody that you
Mm.
don't talk to on a regular basis. Maybe there's a friend that you haven't reached out to in a couple of years. Have a conversation.
Nice.
um, you know Meeting new people is also very inspiring. Maybe if you don't want to do that and you don't like talking to people, listen to a different podcast that you don't normally listen
Hey.
to. Watch something new on YouTube that maybe you didn't necessarily find before, but have something new is my point. Try something new.
I love that. I actually will take you up on that. I'm going to listen to a new podcast. That's a really great idea. I
Okay.
think I've been listening to way too much Joe Rogan, and I think it's time for me to switch it up. So, Allie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on here. I love just geeking out about nature and marketing and advertising and creativity. So it was a awesome
I'm all
convo.
here for it.
Yeah. And before you go, can you let people know where to find you online and how can we support?
Well, I work for Public Haus Agency, so
Mhm.
you'll find all my contact information there. It's Public Haus is spelled Haus
Mhm.
Agency. And then, like I said, don't look at my LinkedIn because it's not been updated. That's not a good way to contact me. I hardly ever go on it.
Mhm. Okay, so no social media. We're going to Public House. Okay.
Yeah, for my own self, I'm not big on social media. So
Yeah, and
I
if
do
you're
it
in
all
the
day. It's not for me.
and if you're in the valley, just look outside. Allie will be walking around, making sure that your dog is in the same place.
Yep, in
Well,
bright colors.
in bright colors. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Allie. I really appreciate you being on here, and you have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Yeah, thank you for having me.
For sure.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchel Dumlao. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.